This video begins with my futile attempt to save some money and simply restore my gate by pressure washing the paint off. After an hour of making very little progress, I gave up and remortgaged my house so I could afford the wood to build a new gate. To start, I cut my 2x4 boards to final length at my miter saw. The gate is as high as the existing fence and half an inch shorter than the width of the opening. Next, I can cut the half lap joints on all 4 boards. I mark the center of the end of a 2x4 so I can set the depth correctly on the miter saw. A scrap piece of plywood is placed in front of the fence to space the 2x4 under the center of the blade. This is done so the entire cut is flat and doesn't follow the shape of the blade on the back of the cut. Obviously, this technique requires a sliding miter saw equipped with a depth stop such as mine. If this isn't something you have access to, these half-lap joints can be cut with a circular saw, bandsaw, table saw, or handsaw. If none of those options work, you can always gnaw on it like a beaver for 3 weeks. Your life, your choice, man. I won't judge. After the 8 million scoring cuts are made, I clamp the board in my linear actuator vise and smash out the little chunks, which is very satisfying to do and is the main reason I chose to make the joint this way. After some quick work with a chisel to flatten out the ridges, I can hit the joint with my 60 grit sanding block and the joint looks great. Since this is an outdoor project and the joinery is not what I would call furniture quality, I add construction adhesive to each joint. I make sure the corner is square and fire in a couple mean nails to hold things in place while I add 4 washer head screws to the joint. The same is then repeated on the kitty corner joint, not the 2 adjacent as they will be after this. This is done to achieve a square gate with very little fussing around. Glue is added to the remaining 2 corners before adding the 4 screws in each to hold everything together for all time. Next, I cut to rough length the diagonal 2x4 board and lay it under the frame. I then center and trace out the shape to be cut at the miter saw. I didn't try to measure the specific angles needed for this, I just simply turned the laser on my miter saw and lined it up to my pencil lines and cut. To attach the cross brace to the frame, I first fit the piece and clamp the edges to align the boards. I then drill a large clearance hole for the head of my 4-inch number 10 screws, after I use a long, smaller bit to drill a pilot hole for the length of the screw. I then remove the 2 screws so I can add glue to the joint and then reassemble. The same is then repeated for the other corner, except this time I add the glue before the screws. Next up, I can start attaching fence slats by starting on both ends. I decided to use construction adhesive for the whole project as it guarantees the gate won't ever sag or come out a square. The boards are aligned flush with the bottom and held in place temporarily with a few mean nails. With both ends in place, I lay out all the boards needed for the front and measure the distance not covered. I take that measurement divided by 6 to find what size spacer I need. I do a dry test to make sure my spacer is correct and it looks good. The interior boards are attached one after another using the spacer blocks with more glue and brad nails. The gate is flipped over to begin working on the back side. The back is the same procedure except the starting board is offset using my combination square to center the boards between the gaps on the other side. I then bring the gate down to the garage floor for some quality hammer time.
Hammer time!
Every place where the boards intersect a piece of 2x4 frame, I added 3 1.5-inch galvanized nails in a random pattern to lock the boards in place. The reason for doing this on the floor is it makes hammering nails in so much easier when the wood isn't allowed to deflect the energy of the hammer back at you. I then draw the arc shape by bending a thin piece of wood between 2 quick clamps set just above where the 2x4 frame stops. The arc is cut out using my jigsaw. If you don't have a jigsaw, I would suggest you go get one. The same is then done to the other side off camera. The attachment points for the massive 8-inch hinges need some scrap pieces of fence board to make them sit flush. These are cut to size and then glued and nailed in place. Next I can attach the hinges, which really could have been done in my shop, but anyways, I made sure to drill pilot holes at each hinge as it gets 4 lag bolts to hold them in place. Next up is removing the old gate.
This is Sparta!
I take off the old hinges, which were very strangely installed, as well as the little top piece above the post. The tiny fence next to the house needs to be removed as well, but the 4x4 post is getting reused as I really didn't want to rip it out and pour new concrete since the 2 posts were pretty good shape anyways. I then tried to remove the paint with my belt sander, which worked pretty good, but it was too slow for my liking. I then came back with my power planer, which did a great job taking off the paint in a hurry. I then went over everything again with the belt sander to finish the post. Next I could attach the gate to the 4x4 post using a scrap block under the hinge and attach the hinges using 8 3.5 inch number 10 screws. These long screws ensure the gate never goes anywhere. Next I cut a piece of 2x4 to be used as the wall end of the tiny fence. I attach this board to the house by using my hammer drill and 3 long Tapcon screws with large washers. I then mark a piece of 2x4 for the top and bottom pieces and cut them to length at my miter saw. The top gets some glue and 3-inch screws to attach the wall piece to the 4x4 post. Next, the top and bottom rails that the slats get nailed to are hammered in place and toe nailed with more 3-inch screws. Next, I cut the 3 fence boards to length at the miter saw. These boards all receive some glue at the top and bottom and are held on with 3 galvanized nails at each attachment point. The same as with the hinges, I add a spacer piece to the back of the gate for the latch mechanism to reach the appropriate offset. The latch is lined up and 6 number 10 screws are used to attach it. And with that, the project is complete.